Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Here we go again. Another day, another veteran wide receiver getting linked to the Washington Commanders, and this time the name on everybody's lips is 34-year-old Keenan Allen. And that's not even the only thing we're getting into today, because I also sat down and watched the first 2 episodes of Netflix's Quarterback Season 3, starring our very own Jayden Daniels alongside Baker Mayfield, Cam Ward, and Joe Flacco, so you don't have to. 2 big stories, 1 video, so let's get into it. Let's set the scene first, because context matters here. It's the middle of July, rookies report to camp in just over a week, veterans follow about a week after that, and the entire Commanders fan base is stuck in that maddening in-between stretch where there's no actual football being played, but somehow the discourse never stops. Every single day you wake up, log onto your timeline, and it's the exact same conversations on repeat. We are so close to the point where actual football takes over, joint practices, the Hall of Fame game, real preseason snaps, instead of endless hypotheticals about which 30-something wide receiver is going to save this offense. But we're not there yet, so here we are talking hypotheticals once again. Yesterday, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler floated the idea that Washington and Baltimore could be among a handful of teams interested in Stefon Diggs if he ends up getting signed before camp opens. That's been the story simmering for a couple of weeks now. But then today, on a different radio hit, Fowler tossed out something new, saying the Commanders have been part of conversations surrounding veteran receiver Keenan Allen. And look, before we even get into whether this makes sense, I've got to say something about how these reports keep getting worded, because it's starting to sound like these front offices are being cross-examined in a courtroom instead of just, doing normal roster business. It's vague, it's non-committal, and half the time you're left trying to read tea leaves about what it actually means. What I take away from it is simple. Somebody, somewhere, connected to this front office has at least had a conversation. Formal or informal, that name drops Keenan Allen as a player worth discussing. But here's the part that genuinely doesn't add up. Just one night earlier in that same Stefon Diggs conversation, the reporting was that Washington is specifically hunting for a speed option at receiver. And then, less than 24 hours later, suddenly we're hearing Keenan Allen's name in trade or free agency chatter. Those 2 things simply do not line up. Keenan Allen has plenty of positive traits, but blazing, defense-stretching speed has never, at any single point in his career, been one of them. He was never a burner. He was never the guy running by cornerbacks on a go route. So if the ask is truly a speed receiver 2 weeks before camp, Keenan Allen doesn't fit that specific need. That doesn't mean he's not a talented player. It just means the 2 storylines coming out of the same week feel like they're describing 2 completely different roster needs. So then, what actually is Keenan Allen at this stage of his career? He is, without question, one of the most quietly consistent wide receivers this league has seen over the last decade. He's one of the more respected veterans in the entire sport, a technician, a route-running savant who has built his entire game on precision rather than pure athleticism. Consider this. In every single season of his career where he's appeared in more than 1 game, Keenan Allen has never finished with fewer than 700 receiving yards. Never, even people who want to write him off as washed at this stage, have to acknowledge that his floor right now is still something like 80 catches, 700 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Look at that stat line for a second. It's remarkably clean, remarkably consistent. No wild boom or bust seasons, just steady. Reliable production year after year, even in years where injuries limited his availability. And if you think about what Washington's receiver room actually looks like beyond Terry McLaurin, a player like that would be an enormous asset. Think about the young guys in that room right now. Players like Treylon Burks, Antonio Williams, Luke McCaffrey, and Dyami Brown. A veteran technician like Keenan Allen wouldn't just be a name on the depth chart. He'd be a walking clinic for how to run routes at an elite level, how to consistently get open using leverage and technique instead of just pure speed. And by the way, Dyami Brown might already have a few years in the league under his belt, but he's still right around Jayden Daniels' own age, so in a sense you'd basically be adding a wise old mentor to a room full of guys still figuring out the position at the NFL level. Now, do I think Washington actually lands Keenan Allen? Honestly, I'm skeptical. If the front office is serious about adding a veteran receiver before camp, sure, he'd absolutely have to be somewhere on the short list. But let's not pretend this team's entire season hinges on whether a 34-year-old receiver signs a one-year deal in the middle of July. That said, would he represent a legitimate on-field upgrade over guys like Burks, Antonio Williams, and Luke McCaffrey right now, today? Yeah, honestly, probably. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise just to be contrarian. And here's the thing about how these rumors spiral out of control. National media outlets at times operate a lot like desperate, starving fans. They just want a recognizable name attached to a storyline. And they don't always dig into whether that name actually fits the specific need being described. And this fan base, bless it, can be just as guilty. I've genuinely seen people online floating names like DeAndre Hopkins as some kind of savior option heading into next season, and folks, come on now. Keenan Allen is not DeAndre Hopkins. But let's be clear about something else too. At this current stage of both of their careers, Keenan Allen is still a significantly more productive, more reliable option than whatever DeAndre Hopkins has left in the tank. So if we're going to daydream about veteran receiver additions, let's at least daydream accurately. Honestly, Keenan Allen might be the last big veteran receiver name we end up debating before training camp actually kicks off, and there's a very real chance this team signs absolutely none of these guys. But hypothetically, adding him would make a lot of sense on paper. Before we move off this topic entirely, I do want to take a quick second for something completely unrelated to rumors and speculation. Happy birthday to Antonio Williams, a player I have been extremely high on. That young man is about to turn into a legitimate problem for opposing defenses this season, and by the time this year wraps up, I have a strong feeling a lot of people are going to be circling back to say they underestimated him. He is not some project player still trying to learn the position on the fly. Compare that to a guy like Luke McCaffrey, who's a converted quarterback still working through the nuances of playing receiver at this level, or Jalen Lane, an electric return specialist who's still developing as a true receiver out of the slot. Antonio Williams isn't in either of those developmental buckets. He's already further along, and I think that distinction matters heading into the season. All right, let's shift gears completely and get into something a lot more fun, because this next part has absolutely nothing to do with rumors and everything to do with genuinely great television. Netflix's Quarterback returned for its third season, and this year's cast is a fascinating mix, headlined by our guy Jayden Daniels alongside Baker Mayfield, Cam Ward, and Joe Flacco. And I'll be honest, when I first saw this lineup, my first reaction was pure curiosity about why in the world they decided to include Joe Flacco in this group. But after sitting through the first 2 episodes, I completely understand the casting, and honestly, it's been outstanding television so far. Each of these 4 quarterbacks represents a completely different chapter of a football life. Jayden Daniels is the potential face of this entire league, a guy who dragged a franchise that had been through years of dysfunction all the way to the doorstep of the Super Bowl in his very first season. Cam Ward is a #1 overall pick that somehow still flies under the radar in terms of national attention, so getting an inside look at who he actually is as a person is genuinely intriguing. Baker Mayfield brings pure must-see energy, playing with a swagger and an edge that makes him magnetic on camera. And then there's Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl-winning quarterback whose journey through this league, including getting benched again this past season, adds a completely different emotional layer to the show. Four very different stories, and the show weaves them together beautifully. The first episode leans heavily into family, and it opens with Cam Ward at the draft looking like he genuinely would rather be anywhere else, at home with the people he loves instead of standing under the bright lights. From there, the show pivots into Baker Mayfield's love story with his wife, someone he's actually been with since college, and there's this wonderfully awkward moment where a mutual friend playing matchmaker told her to look Baker up online before they even met, which led her straight into a highlight reel of some of his rowdier, more chaotic college moments. Not exactly the smoothest introduction, but obviously things worked out in the end. Then the show turns to Jayden Daniels, and this is really the emotional centerpiece for Commanders fans. They take us back to his hometown in the Inland Empire area of California, showing that his old high school actually renamed its stadium in his honor, which is an incredible, almost surreal marker of how far this young man has already come in life. The show spends real time on the relationship between Daniels and his mother, who makes it very clear in her own interview that she is not interested in living off her son's success. She has her own life and her own path. It's a small moment, but it says a lot about the values in that household. There's also a brief moment with Terry McLaurin discussing Daniels' naturally introverted personality and how uncomfortable he can be with unwanted attention despite being thrust into a spotlight role simply because of how talented he is. From there, we jump to Joe Flacco. And there's this quietly funny moment involving the sports car he was gifted after winning Super Bowl MVP years ago. A car that, by his own admission, has basically just been sitting untouched in storage ever since. It's a small detail, but it speaks to something bigger about how these elite competitors operate. For a lot of them, once a championship is won, the focus almost immediately shifts to whatever challenge comes next, rather than lingering on past glory. And for Flacco specifically, that next challenge is trying to hang on to a starting job with a franchise that's had a rough go of things in recent history. What makes this show work so well is how honestly it captures the emotional and mental toll of being one of only 32 starting quarterbacks on the planet at any given time. As fans, we tend to nitpick and criticize every single decision these guys make on Sundays without ever really considering what they're carrying off the field. Watching this series peel back that curtain has genuinely been one of the most compelling sports documentary experiences in recent memory. Flacco's journey gets explored in real depth too, bouncing across multiple franchises over the years before eventually landing back with Cleveland, where he's now not just trying to hold down a starting job, but also mentoring a young quarterback room. Cam Ward's story takes us through his path from a small Texas town through multiple college stops before landing in the NFL, along with glimpses of his personal life and interests away from football. But the moment that hits hardest, at least for Commanders fans, comes when the show gets into Jayden Daniels' second season and the injury that ultimately ended his year. Watching him fight through recovery, going through cryotherapy, red light therapy, every recovery tool available, desperately trying to get back onto the field, is genuinely powerful. There's one particular exchange where he's asked whether watching his backup lead the team to success made things easier on him personally, and his answer says everything about his competitive character. He made it clear that watching his teammates succeed made him genuinely happy, while also being completely honest that he never stops wanting to be the one out there playing. It's a refreshing kind of honesty, supportive of his teammate without pretending he didn't desperately want to be on the field himself. There are lighter moments scattered throughout too, little glimpses of personality and culture across generations, small disagreements about things like on-field style and swagger between the older and younger quarterbacks in the cast, which adds some genuinely funny texture to the show. And then Episode 2 closes with Flacco's season taking a rough turn, culminating in him getting benched in Cleveland, setting up what's clearly going to be a difficult stretch for him heading into the back half of the series. Look, I could talk about these 2 episodes for another hour easily, but the short version is this. If you have Netflix, go watch it. It is every bit as compelling as any major sports documentary series out there, And getting this level of access into Jayden Daniels' mindset, especially considering how notoriously private he tends to be with media, is a genuine treat for this fan base. I'll be working my way through the rest of the season and the days ahead, and I'll keep you posted on how it develops. So here's what I want from all of you watching. Drop a comment and let me know. Do you think Washington should actually go after Keenan Allen? Or is this yet another name that fizzles out before training camp even begins? And while you're down there, let me know if you've started watching Quarterback Season 3 yet, and what your early impressions are of how they're portraying Jayden Daniels so far. If you're enjoying content like this, breaking down every single Commander's storyline as it develops between now and the start of the season, make sure you smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single update as training camp gets closer. There is a lot more coming, more roster rumors, more quarterback recaps, and everything in between. Hail to the Washington Commanders. Until next time.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.